It was an ordinary Tuesday. No argument. No raised voices. Just dinner on the table and the quiet routine of two people who had stopped noticing each other. Then my wife looked at me and said almost casually, "You know I don't need you for absolutely anything, right?" Not angry. Not emotional. Just certain. I didn't respond. Because sometimes the most dangerous words aren't the loud ones. They're the ones people believe. I finished my water, stood up, walked to the bedroom and packed a single bag. No explanation. No questions. No scene. She didn't follow me. That was the second confirmation. I left the house I had paid for, closed the door behind me and drove without turning on the radio. The next morning she called. What? Then again. By noon it was 12 missed calls. By evening, 41. I didn't answer a single one. Because for the first time in years I wasn't reacting. I was moving. What she didn't know was that I hadn't just left the house. I had removed myself from everything that made her feel independent. Every system. Every structure. Every quiet support she had stopped noticing. And by the time she realized what I had actually done, the version of me she thought she didn't need was the only thing holding her life together. My name is Marcus Reed. I'm 41 and for most of my marriage I lived in a role no one officially assigns, but everyone relies on. The silent infrastructure. I didn't dominate rooms. I didn't argue for attention. I didn't build a personality around being needed. I built systems. Our house. Our finances. Our schedules. Insurance, taxes, subscriptions, repairs, investments, everything that runs quietly in the background when life feels easy. My wife, Alina, was successful in ways people could see. Corporate strategy. Promotions. Titles that came with glass offices and polished language. She earned it. I never denied that. But what she never understood was this. Her life ran smoothly because mine was designed to absorb friction. I handled the things no one notices until they break. And over time, that invisibility turned into assumption. Then assumption turned into dismissal. It didn't happen overnight. It happened in small corrections. Small jokes. Small moments where I became less of a partner and more of a convenience. You're overthinking it. I've got it. It's not that complicated. Until eventually, I don't need you for absolutely anything. That sentence didn't come from anger. It came from belief. And belief is harder to fix than emotion. So I didn't argue. Because arguments try to prove value. I wasn't interested in proving anything. I was interested in removing it. And by the time her calls reached 41, I had already taken the first step she never thought I would. I didn't go to a hotel. I didn't call a friend. I went somewhere no one would think to look. My office. Not the one people knew about. The one tied to the back end of everything I built. By 7:30 a.m. I was already logged in. Not angry. Focused. The first thing I did was separate accounts. Joint finances were restructured. Access permissions adjusted. Not blocked, just redirected. Every shared expense, every auto payment, every quiet financial bridge I had been maintaining, was moved back under my control. Then came the second layer. Utilities. Not shut off. Transferred. Responsibility, billing, and authorization, all reassigned to her name. Simple changes. Clean changes. Legal changes. By 9:15 I moved to subscriptions. Streaming. Security systems. Maintenance services. Software renewals. Cloud storage. Everything she used daily without ever asking how it stayed active. All reassigned. All timed. All documented. No damage. Just removal. Because destruction creates chaos. Removal creates realization. Around 10:40 my phone buzzed again. Call number 23. Alina. I flipped it over and kept working. By noon I handled the final piece. The house. Not ownership. Access structure. Smart locks. Security permissions. Internal system control. Everything was still functioning. Just no longer under my silent management. By the time the 41st call came through, her life wasn't collapsing. It was revealing itself. And for the first time, she was going to have to hold it on her own. At 6:12 p.m. she finally stopped calling. Not because she gave up. Because something stopped working. I knew exactly what it was. The security system. Not broken. Just asking for something she had never needed before. Authorization. At 6:18 a message came through. Not a call. A text. Marcus, the system isn't letting me in properly. Can you fix it? Fix it. I stared at the message for a few seconds, then locked my phone and set it aside. Because this wasn't a technical issue. It was a structural one. At 7:03 another message. The payment for the house didn't go through. It says something about authorization change. What did you do? At 7:41 another. Marcus, this isn't funny. By 8:15 the tone changed. Please call me. That word. Please. It hadn't been part of her vocabulary with me for a long time. I leaned back in my chair looking at the ceiling. Not satisfied. Not angry. Clear. Because nothing I had done was dramatic. Nothing was destroyed. Everything still worked. It just didn't work through me anymore. At 9:02 the final message came. Short. Simple. I can't do this alone. That was the moment everything shifted. Not for her. For me. Because for the first time since that Tuesday, she wasn't speaking from certainty. She was speaking from reality. And reality doesn't argue. It teaches. I didn't answer that night. Not the texts. Not the calls that started again after 10. Because timing matters. If I responded too early, it would feel like a reaction. This wasn't a reaction. It was a reset. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m. like I always did. Same routine. Same coffee. Same silence. Except this time, no one was depending on me to keep their day running without noticing. At 7:12 my phone rang again. Alina. I watched it. Let it ring. Then stop. A minute later, a voicemail notification appeared. I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I finished my coffee, opened my laptop, and checked the system logs. Everything was functioning exactly as expected. Payments rerouted. Access reassigned. Notifications triggered. No errors. Just independence. At 8:03 I finally played the voicemail. Her voice wasn't polished anymore. No corporate tone. No control. Just fatigue. Marcus, I didn't realize how much you were handling, she said quietly. The bank called. The system, the house, everything's asking me questions I don't even understand. Pause. Then softer, I thought I had everything under control. That line stayed with me. Because it wasn't arrogance anymore. It was confusion. Real confusion. And that's when I knew. She hadn't meant what she said the way it sounded. But she had believed it. And belief has consequences. So I still didn't call back. Because understanding needs time to settle. By the third day the messages stopped sounding like requests. They sounded like effort. Short updates. Small victories. Quiet admissions. I figured out the billing issue. Spoke to the bank. It's sorted now. Had to call 3 different people, but the system is working. No complaints. No blame. Just learning. I read every message. Didn't reply to any. Because this part mattered more than anything I could say. She was finally experiencing her own life without the invisible layer I had built under it. And she wasn't collapsing. She was adapting. That surprised me. More than the calls. More than the apology. At 4:27 p.m., another message came. Different tone. I understand now. I stared at it longer than the others. Not because it was dramatic. Because it wasn't. No explanation. No justification. Just understanding. That's rare. Most people defend before they understand. She didn't. An hour later, another message followed. I was wrong. Simple. Direct. No conditions attached. I leaned back in my chair, letting that sit. Because apologies aren't powerful when they're emotional. They're powerful when they're clear. And for the first time in years, Alina wasn't speaking from ego. She was speaking from awareness. And that changes everything. But it doesn't erase what came before. So I still didn't respond. Because this wasn't about making her feel heard. It was about making sure she had actually changed. And change doesn't happen in one message. On the 5th day she stopped texting altogether. No updates. No explanations. No attempts to pull me back into the role I had stepped out of. Just silence. That was the first real sign of change. Because silence, when it's chosen, is very different from silence that expects a response. I let it sit. For one more day. Then on the 6th morning I called her. She answered on the 2nd ring. Marcus. No certainty. No control. Just presence. I got your messages, I said. Pause. Then quietly, I didn't expect you to call. I know, I replied. Another pause. Then she said the one thing that mattered more than everything else she had said. I didn't just miss you, she said. I noticed you. That landed. Because missing someone is emotional. Noticing them is awareness. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she added. I just stopped seeing everything you were doing. I know, I said. And I meant it. We sat in silence for a moment. Not awkward. Not tense. Different. Then she asked carefully, So, what happens now? I looked out the window thinking about that Tuesday. About the sentence that started all of this. You don't need me, I said. She didn't interrupt. Didn't correct. Just listened. But if I come back, I continued, it won't be like before. Another pause. Then steady now, I don't want before. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about fixing something broken. It was about rebuilding something real. And that takes more than words. I didn't go back that day. Or the day after. Because returning too quickly would have turned everything into relief instead of change. And relief fades. Change stays. We spoke every day though. Short conversations. Clear ones. No assumptions. No shortcuts. She started handling things on her own. Not perfectly. But honestly. And every time something worked, she didn't say, see? I can do it. She said, I understand what you were doing. That difference mattered. A week later I went back to the house. I didn't ring the bell. I used my key. The door opened the same way it always had. But everything inside felt different. Not because anything had changed physically. Because awareness had replaced assumption. Alina was in the kitchen. She turned when she heard the door. No performance. No rehearsed apology. Just presence. You're back, she said quietly. I nodded. Not emotional. Not distant. Balanced. I am. Pause. Then she stepped closer. Not to hold me. Not to fix anything. Just to stand there. I was wrong, she said again. Not louder. Not stronger. Just true. I looked at her, then around the house. Everything still worked. But now she knew why. That's not the problem, I said. She frowned slightly. What is? I met her eyes. The problem was, you believed you didn't need me. A moment passed. Then she shook her head. I don't need you, she said softly. And before I could react, she added, I choose you. That was the difference. And this time, I stayed.